Right. And I'm finally live. All right. So I made a couple of changes to my microphone because it was using the internal microphone and not the good one. So the sound quality must have improved right now, and that's good. And so we are cloning Color Switch live. And now I'm gonna share my screen right now, and I'm gonna show you what we were doing and where we are right now. So let me double check that we have my screen shared. Okay, present to everyone. Good. All right. So here, what we have is the Unity 2D scene where I have a ball and a floor. And where we stopped is that if I press play, we have the ball that goes through the floor and it doesn't stop there. And one of the reasons why is that the floor need a box collider and not a rigid body. So we added a rigid body, and I showed you that by adding the rigid body, what happens is that if we don't freeze the position, the floor and the ball are going all the way down and they're moving with the gravity. But if you remove the rigid body on the floor, so click on remove component and add the component and locate a box collider and take the box collider 2D since we're working in 2D. And that's all we need. Now, if you press play, look what happens. The ball will go down and will stop on the floor, which is great. Now, I think that the ball, maybe if you think that the ball is a bit too fast, you can always click on the sphere, and what you could do is play with the gravity scale. Right now, the gravity scale is at 1, but if I put it to, let's say, 0.2, it's going to be 5 times slower because it's 1 divided by 0.2, it's 5 times. So if I press play, it's going down, but a lot slower. And if I inverse the gravity scale and put a negative sign in front of it, the scale goes against gravity, okay? But that's not what we want. So leave it at 1, that's good for now. It looks very real. All right. Now, what we want is just like Color Switch. Whenever we press the mouse button, we want to be able to push the ball up. All right, so let's go ahead and create that script. I'm going to select the sphere. I'm going to right click, and inside of it, I'm going to create a new script. So one quick way is to click on add component, and here I can select script or new script, and then I'm going to put a name, and that would be a player script. Okay, why player script? Because it's for moving the player, which is the ball. I know it's a sphere, but it's still a player script. So create and add. All right, so now I'm going to double click on the player script to open it with MonoDevelop. If you're on a PC, Windows PC, you might be able to open it with Visual Studio. It's up to you at this point. What matters is that we can program that. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And what do we want to do here? We want to apply some physics forces on the ball whenever the mouse is down. So we don't need the update and the start, so I'm just going to remove them for now. And what we need is called the fixed update. Now, you may be wondering, what is the fixed update and why it's not the update method? Because the fixed update has to do with the physics. The update happens every cycle of the game, every time there's a new frame. But the fixed update is every time there's a new engine of physics engine renderer. So just type void fixed update. And as you can see, it's uppercase F and uppercase U. Right? And now, just for the sake of learning, we're going to press the mouse button down and just display a message to the log. So if input dot get mouse button down, and that would be the button down 0, which is the left mouse click. So if we have that, then we are going to print debug.log and say mouse button down. So basically it's a click, or AKA click. Okay, also known as click. Right? So far, so good. Put a semicolon at the end, save this, and make sure it's attached to the script. And you can save also the scene inside of Unity. And now I'm going to press play, and I'm going to the console here. And whenever I tap here, look, it says mouse button down. Yes, so every time I click, I have a mouse button down in the console. All right, so far so good. But that's not what we want. We want to apply a force so that it moves up. And how do we do this? Well, we need to call what's called adding some force. Okay, so there are two ways. when it's down, we can either add force upward or add an impulse upward. Now, the difference between a force and an impulse is that the force is independent of the weight. However, the impulse is directly proportional to the mass. Now, I don't want to get too complex into the physics, but the difference here means that the bigger the object is, the more amount should be the impulse. So okay, so the force doesn't matter if the body is big or small, the force will be the same. So it's pretty better in this case to use the force so that we don't know how big the sphere is. And how do we do that? Well, we can do this dot, and now we're going to apply the force. So to add force, we have to use the rigid body 2D. So one way could be to get the rigid body of this object. So how do we get the rigid body? Well, there's many ways. We can just get it in the start, or we can assign it. Now, one way to get it in the start is to add it here. So we could do rigid body 2D body. Okay, so we created it, and let's make it public. And now let's create the start method to get it. Void start. And let's get the rigid body. So body is equal to get component, and the component is the rigid body 2D. And that's it, we have it now. Now, this will only work if you have a rigid body 2D assigned to the sphere. Why? Because if you don't have that rigid body 2D on the sphere, it will not work. There is no way it will work. Okay, so right now I have some errors, so I need to go back to the script and see what the error is. Yes, is that. So let me just put this away so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. Right. So if I click on the sphere, you have to have this rigid body. If you don't, then it cannot get the component and it will be null in the script. All right. Okay. So now that we have the rigid body, we can say if body is different than null, so technically if we do have a rigid body, then what do? Let's add some force. So body dot add force, and the force needs to be a vector 2D, and it's going to be upward. So that would be vector 2 dot up. All right, and we can do times. Let's call this one intensity. Okay, now we do not have the intensity yet, so let's create that. I'm going to come here before the public and do public float intensity, and is equal to, let's go by default, is equal to 1. All right, and let's save that. All right, so now it's going to add the force upward times 1. Let's go in Unity and try this out. I'm going to press play, and now I'm going to click. And as I click, not much is happening here. And the reason why we don't see much happening is that maybe the intensity is just not enough to push it up. So we can play with the intensity and multiply this. Let's say with 100 and see if that does anything. Let's try now. And still, now it's starting to work. You guys see that? It's moving up. It's not that great, but it's moving up. So you can play with the intensity. I'm going to do 1,000, and let's see if that works. All right, so 1,000 works a lot better, but it's a lot more, right? So we need to play and find the right intensity. Let's go with 200 and see. All right, 200 isn't too bad. Probably a little bit more than 200, right? So let's go with, let's say, 400. So, you have to judge basically on what you have, okay? All right, 400 isn't too bad at all. Okay, so I'm going to stay with 400. All right. Okay, so now that I know that 400 is good, I'm going to tap and actually do 420, just a little bit more. And that's how you deal with the intensity. All right, you can save that. And as you can see, we already have a game that is already working, in the sense that we have the exact same mechanics as the mechanics of the color switch game. Now, something else you can do really quickly is also that every time the ball moves, you want the camera to follow the sphere, right? And the best way to do that is to take the main camera and make it a child of the sphere by drag and dropping it inside of the sphere. All right? So now if I press play, check this out. It's going to move with it, as you can see. You guys see that? It's like it's moving with it. So which is good. I mean, right now it's hard to see. And a good way to see that is to add some other objects. I can easily just go to my project and add more floors. You know, it's just drag and dropping in here. Now I'm going to just call this one cube or rectangle. Okay. And I'm going to move it to another corner. Okay. I'm going to move it here so that it's easier to see. All right. And now if I press play, we'll see that it's moving with the camera. You guys ready? All right. You see, it's easier to see now. All right. So that's it now. It's moving with the camera. It's perfect to make games and be able to see what's happening. Okay. Now, let's think about what's next to do. We have to add different circles with different colors and different bars and shapes to be able to go through. And we also have to add colors. So we want the ball to have different colors as well. And that we'll do in the next part. All right, so I hope that you guys learned from it. And I don't know exactly when I'm going to be doing the next part, but it's going to be very soon. All right.